and welcome to the Show with me, host Lauren Jones Bell. I like to, even though it's not really my name, but I like to say Lauren. I'm changing my name over to Lauren Bell eventually. Anyway, today I have Sasha Star Robertson. I'm so excited to have her. She is an intentional living and purpose coach, and I've gotten to know her these last few, I guess, months. I don't know. We met a while ago, I feel like.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to share her story and how she's shown up for God and have this time with her. So if you just want to share your story, share who you are, what you do, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Lauren. I know this is, like you said, we've been chatting through Marco Polo and Instagram and all over, even jumping on Zooms periodically for a few months now. And so it's been really great to get to know you and get a peek inside your world. And I just appreciate you doing this show and having me on here. So thank you.
Of course.
So I am Sasha Star Robertson, wife of 12 years now to my best friend. I'm a mother of one, and our son, he's going to be 2 in just a couple of weeks. And I'm like, what? How did that happen? It seems like I just became a mom sometimes, but he came to our family through adoption. So we are super blessed to have him be part of our life, his first family be a part of our life as well. And I love travel. I love Jesus. I love natural health. And I say I'm Alaskan, but it's by heart, not blood. I wasn't born here, but I've officially lived here more than half my life, and I couldn't imagine calling anywhere else home. So that's kind of like me in a little nutshell. In terms of showing up, like, it's such a huge question. I feel like God has really been asking me for a while to step out in a number of ways, step out and show up, but then still asking me to do more. So I think in the first space was kind of like going through my process of really like addressing and healing through childhood trauma that I had been through was kind of like the first area that he had called me to step out. And he's like, okay, you did all this work, but now you need to like make that work for us, like for the kingdom. You need to share your experience and share how you've overcome and like gone from this back in the winter of 2014, 2015. Like I was in a pit of despair. I had no hope. I was really suicidal. And just had no desire to live. And he's brought me to this like absolutely incredible place of where I am today, like as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as a member of my community. And he's like, people need to know that, especially in this like hurting world that we're living in, that there is hope, like no matter how dark it is, that there's always hope for the future. And so he was asking me to step out and speak out more about that and just share my testimony and share that truth and just share God's love with the world. And so that is something I've been doing for the last few years. And then stepping into this role of motherhood was kind of the second area where he was asking me to show up. And for myself, my husband and I, we struggled for almost 10 years of infertility, and we came to the decision of adoption, and we pursued domestic infant adoption, which was quite a journey, a rocky up and down, like roller coaster of a journey for us. But we brought our son home. We were so grateful. And this is the dream that I had since I married my husband. I just wanted to be a mom so desperately, and to desire that more than almost life itself was crazy to find myself a few months into motherhood, leaving my career and asking myself, like, what is my identity anymore? Am I just a mom now? Is my life only peekaboo and diaper changes? Like, it was kind of difficult to reconcile. Like you wanted this your whole life, but now you're kind of almost in a sense of struggling with my identity, in that I loved my son. Like I loved every moment that I had with him. I wanted nothing more than to be a stay-at-home mom to him. But also just felt myself wondering, where's the personal and professional development? Where's the over a decade that I had spent in the career world and all of those things? So that really dove me into this identity and motherhood and purpose discovery along with God. And he really called me to show up and step out in that, in speaking to mothers, making sure that they know, for one, they're not alone in those thoughts and those. He helped me uncover so much identity and so much purpose, and helped me live a far more intentional life as a mother. It was like a catalyst in my life to be a better wife, a better friend, just a better woman in general. And so he was calling me to help like light that fire and be a catalyst in the lives of other women, of other young mothers, and help them remember who they are in addition to being a mother. And so I've been doing that for about the last year and a half, showing up for moms and in the space of coaching and creating courses. And a year now, I've been working on a planner. It's called the Life and Goals Planner. And that actually just released last month. Super excited. It's a digital and printed planner and workbook. It walks women through 50 kind of in-depth thought-shifting, thought-provoking questions about their big picture identity and purpose, and what they've been through in life and where they're trying to go, and what their ultimate dreams and desires are for when they complete this life here on earth, and making sure they're constantly striving towards that. But then it also helps them make sure they're taking care of their self and their soul, addressing some mindset stuff, and then breaking down that big picture stuff into goals that they can actually achieve through intentional living on the daily. So that has been a huge, huge project that I feel like God called me to work on and work through. And I'm so thankful that it's not like completely off my plate or anything like that, but that like it's off to the printer and it's in people's hands. And it's super great to see people using that. So that was a huge one. And then lastly, he's been calling me to do a podcast lately. So that's my January kind of 2022. I'm hoping to launch a podcast. And even with that, he's really transformed the idea. I was just going to have it speaking to mothers and to women, but my husband and I had a long talk a few weeks ago, and I think he's going to be my number one guest on there. So we're going to be talking about just intentional living in general. So intentional marriage, intentional parenting, intentional living in kind of all areas of life. And I'm hoping to have a lot of powerhouse guests on there, people sharing their story and how they're showing up in life, kind of similar to what you're doing here. So that's me in a nutshell, what I've been working on, how God's been calling me to show up, a little bit of my story. And yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing all that, Sasha. I just love you. I mean, I think that there is a need, and I think that's what really helped me keep going, honestly, is because there's a need for what you have and what you've gone through. And I talk a lot about this, like in my yoga classes in general, but you know, where we've been hurt, and I really love to speak to the women that are like, I'm afraid, or I don't know, or because I was that woman where I was like, I don't know. And I would hear things and I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. And then I would either ignore it or be scared. And now, like, if I hear something, I'm like, I'm going to do that. You know, I'm reading this book right now, and it's about this woman who got off the internet for a whole year. And she was like, I'm going to go to church. And the first thing they asked me to do, I'm just going to do it. And they invited her to go to Nicaragua on a mission trip, and she went, and it would like change her life. And it's just so funny, you know. And it's like, I feel like so many women, just especially moms, and what you said was so good, because for those of you who know me, I just became a stepmom this year. And I think the hardest thing that I'm really struggling with is I don't want to lose who I was, you know. I don't want to lose what I've worked so hard in getting, you know, my sobriety, my business, my things I've done on my own. But when you get married and you have a family, like, you have to find that balance. And I'm a very like all or nothing type of person. So I'll go like all in on them or all in on my business. And my family's like, what about me? Or, you know, my business is not making as much money as I would like to make. So it's like, it's a struggle finding that that balance. And then I just know so many moms that are like, I don't feel like I have a purpose, my purpose are my kids and I just cater to them. And it's like, yes, but there's so many ways. My incense loves to fly in my face. There's so many ways to make money while being a mom, and there's so many options. So I'm just so proud of you. I know I'm just like a little encourager, but I'm so proud of you for like using your hurts to get to where you are now. And that's just such a beautiful story. And then I know we've talked about your planner and like how I feel about it. I think it's a great idea. And I think that it could help so many women get organized, because for me personally, like we were just talking before the chat here, like I need to write everything down. I need to schedule everything out. And it's like, if I don't, I'm a mess. Like, I mean, I'm already a mess some days, but I need that like clear direction. Like even now I've actually been writing a list, like that with Sasha, or, order the plants, or, like run this many days, and I check it off. And I don't know, for me as a child, my mom would be like, check off your chores. And it's like, it makes me feel good. So
Yes,
I think it's good to have
I'm
that,
with you.
like, those goals and to write them down. I don't think people realize how important it is to write down your goals and to see them and to verbalize them and then to tell somebody. I mean, that's scary. Like, this is my goal. And then you have to like maybe do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the statistics are something like less than, and like, don't 100% quote me on this because I don't remember it, but I shared about it on my TikTok like a few weeks ago. I think it's less than 3% of people in like the world actually achieve their goals. And it's because only 8%, I think it is, of people actually write them down. And that is like a huge factor in achieving what you have set out to do, is writing it down. And it's crazy. Like before I was as intentional as I am now, I would just literally in January write down a few goals. I wouldn't even like break them down. How am I going to achieve it? Like all this other stuff. But I would just write down goals on a piece of paper, and I would come back to that like the following January. And I actually achieved like 8 out of 10 of them.
Oh.
And just because I wrote them down, it's like, there's a process and write it down that affects your brain, that affects your thoughts, that helps you remember this is something that matters to me. So definitely, I'm with you in making lists and writing it down and all of that stuff. So I completely agree.
Yeah, and I love that. Let me just be clear for the women that are like, I don't actually do that at all ever. Like I didn't either, like I did not plan. When I lived in Charlotte for a year, I didn't plan anything. I didn't schedule anything. I just lived. And that was very freeing. When you're a mom and you have children to take care of and a husband to feed or wanting attention, like you kind of have to schedule it out because you don't have as much carefree time,
Mhm.
because I was very resistant to that. And, people would say, why don't you write things down? And why don't you make a list? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. But I am stubborn. But I've gotten a lot better with that. So it's just so great. Yes. So I know I always like to ask this question to all the people that I kind of chat with is like, what would you say to a mom that may be listening now, that's struggling with balance, that's struggling with purpose? Like where should she start? Like what should she do first? Because I know, like for me, and I love this question because when I started listening to podcasts, I don't listen to podcasts as much as I used to, as much as I would like to. I'm more of a old school, like book in hand type of reader in this season of my life. But when I would listen to podcasts, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I feel like they're talking to me, like I feel like they're speaking directly to me. So what would you say to someone that might be struggling with that, like right now?
I do the same thing. So I'm just like, how are there so many good podcasts? Even when I do read books, I've got 3 books right here by me that I'm like reading at the same time, which I don't know is recommended. I'm always like, this is so good.
I have like three types of books mixing in, like one for one for the book club I'm doing, one for another like small group I'm doing, which is like a daily thing. So I guess it just depends on the books, but.
Yeah. So what I would say to a mom who's struggling with balance or identity, like kind of purpose in life, for one is you're not alone. Like, I think that's the number one thing to remember is that it's common, it's natural, especially in today's world. Like almost like we were talking about before this, like you've got to get up and get the kids to school, or you're a homeschooling mom and you're responsible for their schooling like throughout the day as well. After, you're preparing lunches, you're preparing dinner, like after school, you've got activities, you got to take them to karate or soccer, you got to make dinner, you got to, have your time with the Lord, you need to stay active, like all just the amount and weight of the responsibilities that are on you are a lot. And so it's totally normal. But I also would love to remind you that overwhelm is a feeling, and it's a feeling that usually stems from a thought. And a lot of times the thought is, it's too much. Like I have too much to do. There's no way I can accomplish all of this. Like so much of it goes back to how we speak to ourselves and those thoughts that we have about the life that we're living. And so that's one of the things that I love to help moms do is break it down and really look at all of the things that you're doing in your life, sitting down and taking an inventory. I have an inventory sheet that I could even provide you like a link to it. So all the women watching this can go ahead and snag that. But it's just to inventory, take a week, print out 2 copies, maybe even do it for 2 weeks if you to inventory what you're doing with your time all throughout the day. And I will warn you, it starts at 4 a.m. like the time on my day. But that's when I wake up, because I know that I can accomplish so much more in a day. My mindset is drastically different when I rise before my family. I'm not feeling behind on everything. I'm able to have my time with God in the morning. I'm able to have my time with myself and just gather my thoughts and take a shower or whatever it is, like undistracted by life. So that does not mean you have to do that. Start it whenever you start your day. Highly recommended though. But inventory what you're doing in your day. And that's the number one thing to do. Just like when you're budgeting for your finances, you have to know where your money's going. And then you have to tell it where to go. Your time is very much the same. You have to know and recognize where you're spending your time so you can tell it where to the time work for you. And then the last thing I would really say to that is maybe the last thing is this sign right here. You can't see the whole thing, but it says shalom. And it's really like, it's been my word of the year this year, but it was kind of like my word of the year before that. And my unofficial word of the year, I guess you could say. And it just means so much to me because shalom is peace, right? Like directly translated, it's peace. And it's most commonly thought of as a greeting, like a salutation, but it's a wholeness and like it's a harmony of things, like all things being complete and working together. And so I love to live my life just based off of this shalom. Like when I'm choosing if I'm going to say yes or no to something in my life, I have to always bring it back to shalom. Like understanding my big picture, my purposes and my priorities and what I'm focusing on in my life really helps me to determine, is this bring shalom? Because I know as a woman, as a mom, as a wife, as a believer, I'm always going to be bombarded with opportunities to do things, whether it's for a friend, for my spouse, for my kids, for my community, whatever it is. And I need to always take it back to that shalom. Like, is this producing peace and harmony in my life and like where God is calling me to go? Or is this just going to produce more overwhelm and cause me to be distracted and things of that nature? So I think there's definitely a difference between good things and God things. And God calls each of us as individual, unique people to serve in a certain capacity. And so often looking at what other people are doing in their God things can distract us as being good things, but they might not be for us. So I hope that makes sense. I could talk on this for like ever, like what I could say. I could go into the identity aspect and all these other things, but for the sake of the time we have here today, I'll end with that.
Oh, I love that so much. Maybe we can do like an Instagram live sometime too. I mean, I'm trying to like fiddle with that stuff because I think that this really needs to be talked about more, because I think there were so many good things there. And I love that shalom. I wrote that down because I just love that. See, I write things down. I write like everything down. not even because I might not even look back at it. It just is in my brain when I write it down, like at church
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, if I'm right, or like when I'm listening to something. Um, and I want to also say, like, it all takes time, I'm an impatient person. So when I was like stuck in my weird place in life, I'm like, why am I not there now? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I think God doesn't give us things unless we're ready for them, when we're mature enough. Like, I wasn't ready to be married. I wasn't ready to have a child, take care of a
Yes.
now 9-year-old, which is crazy, 9. And also, as you were speaking, I was also thinking, I was on my small group yesterday, and it's like, we're actually, like, playing small does not serve anybody, and when God has called us to do something, we're actually doing a disservice to the world. And my small group leader was like, say that again. And I'm like, we're actually doing a disservice to the world because we're not choosing to show up. And that's why I was like, like showing up. And it's not always comfortable. Like, I was even sitting here thinking, like, I try to come and like, you are just, and I love, like, you are just as real as when I'm talking to you now as I'm talking to, you know what I mean? And I love that because it takes a certain amount of energy to exude when you're not actually being but I think
Mm-hmm.
God calls us to be ourselves, and God calls us to show vulnerably, which is not easy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's just so good. It starts small, and it's a process, and and also being around people that are like-minded. Like, I really thought for the longest time I was alone. And then when I started getting into yoga and finding other people, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's people that think like me. So finding those people and knowing that they're out there, even if they're in Alaska and I'm in South Carolina, even if it's across the
Yes.
continent, like, they're out there.
Yeah.
And then I found, once I started, moving to South Carolina and found those people were in those places, because I'm like, well, I'm alone. I don't have anybody. Nobody understands. Like, I really put myself out there, and I'm like, what do I like to do? And it's hard. It's hard when you feel alone, because you might feel like you're the only one that is in it, when it's actually not. There's so many moms, like, even the moms I talked to you before, like, that are just struggling with finding out what they're called to do. And is it a good thing? It might be a good thing, but is it a God thing? And writing it down and writing
Mm-hmm.
your prayers and asking for prayer. And even I encouraged my one friend, like, go look at what they're doing. Like, if you have this idea in your mind of, like, I want to do this thing, like, go talk to somebody who does that, and share with them, like,
Mm-hmm.
how did you get here? What happened? And just making those baby steps, knowing that it doesn't have to happen all at once.
Yeah. And, I love that you brought that up and that you said that about, like, I just think of this journey, right, where you're trying to get to the castle. And if you just like blink and show up at the castle, you don't actually have the tools and the experience necessary to like stay in the castle.
Yeah.
But if you actually take the journey that's meant for you to get there, when you arrive, you have everything that you need because you've taken the steps. You gained the tools on the way, you gained the experience. And so many words that are just like super resonating with me, because I mentioned like my word of the year this year is shalom. And it's this, wholeness and harmony of like the idea of peace. But if you flash back like a few years ago to speak to the women who aren't moms, like, I knew I was going to be a mom like in the coming years. And this was probably like 3 or 4 years ago. My word of the year was balance, because even prior to motherhood, I felt like I had no balance in my life. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't physically active. I was just trying to balance like a job and a wife and a home. Like, I was completed my degree, and and so balance was something that I was really struggling with. So balance was my word of the year. And then I think it was last year, the year before, when God was really calling me to step out and like speak my truth and share my story. Vulnerability and authenticity were like kind of like my two together words of the year. You were talking about being vulnerable and showing up. And so that really spoke to me too, because it was like, at first I just needed to show up and just say something like that was true to me. And like, as hard as it was, I was like anxious, like people are going to think differently of me. People are going to judge me, like, because I'm finally being the real me.
Oh,
And it just unlocked so much more. I was able to show up more authentically and more vulnerably as time went on. And so I just love this idea of having a word of the year. Like, what is God, what is God calling me to do and be this year? Or what is something that I need to like always be able to return to as that like guiding force. And there were so many times in the year of balance I had to say no because it wasn't bringing balance to my life, or so many times in being vulnerable I had to say yes even when it was scary and I was terrified, because that was my word of the year. Like, if I truly want to be this person and exude this characteristic that I'm talking about, I need to do it even when it's scary or even when it's tough. And then same thing with the shalom this year. So just a lot of keywords that you had mentioned like stood out to me. And so I wanted to share that because it has been a baby step process for me. None of this and nothing was just overnight to like be where I am today. It was slowly focusing on small things or just one word that helped like this transformation process take place. And so none of us, hopefully none of us are ending our lives tomorrow. And so we still have time. We have, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years,
oh, yeah, hhopefully. That's incredible. I just love listening to you, and you're just so inspirational. You know what I mean? Because I think so many people need to hear that and know that they, because I just always thought, you just arrive and everything's great, but like you have to work for it. And especially in ministry, if anyone listening is called to ministry, that's an even slower thing. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's just, it can be very, it can be a lot, but God will always provide. You know what I mean? Like I really struggled with my finances. And then I met David, who my husband now, who really helped me get out of a financial bind and provide in that way. And that was the one thing I needed. I'm like, I just need to be able to do what I need more money, and obviously ministry, a yoga teacher, you're not going to make lots of money. Going into ministry, you can't be like, I'm going to make lots of money. Like that's obviously not the goal, but I've been in church, in my small group a lot, and we've been talking about like the certain, I guess, levels of heaven, you know what I mean? And like how God will bless us so abundantly more when we step into what he has spiritually gifted us with. And like that needs to wake us up, because we're meant to do things here, and we can't let ourselves and our old way of thinking hold us back, and it's like
Yes.
whether we were taught something as a child or said something, like rewiring the mind. I love talking about that stuff. I can go on and on. I know we have to like end, but I just appreciate
No,
you.
I love that. I so agree. And like that's like why I show up, because I feel like, so I think of two different things. Just because you mentioned that, I have to say it. Like there's the Great Commission and what I call the Motherhood Commission. And I think the two go hand in hand. And we're all as believers called to the Great Commission. Like we know this, to go and make disciples. But then we were assigned this Motherhood Commission when we become moms. And then we kind of lose track. Like, of course, serving our home, like that's the number one place that you can show up to make disciples, right? And if you're fostering that in your home and you're making disciples of your children, like that's absolutely going to have a ripple effect. But I feel like we can't lose sight of the bigger, like the Great Commission, and making disciples even still outside of our children, outside of our home, and everywhere we go, even going to the coffee shop. Like you're saying, we have gifts that he's given us. And when we start utilizing those and exercising those, like how much do you like get irritated when you give someone a gift and they just don't even care about it, right? It's just like, man, like I could have given that to somebody else and they would have appreciated it. They would have loved it. They would have used it. And I think about this with like, this was many, many years ago. We gave my father-in-law an iPad, or not an iPad, an iPod. Do they even make those anymore? I don't think they do.
So. Oh,
We gave him an iPod because he loved music. And he never, like, we even got his name engraved on the back and like all this sweet, gestures to it. And he never used it. And it was such a bummer to us because we're like, man, I know kids in foster care that would have loved that. Like I have a friend who can't afford one that loves music that would have loved that. And so it's just a bummer when you give someone a gift and they don't use it. And they just like in their mind, it's just like trash or it's not worthwhile and so
Yeah.
I just think of that when I think of God and the gifts that he's given us. And when we're not stepping out and showing up and using them, like, he's like, come on, I gave you this, like, do good works for the kingdom. So I just had to share that because you mentioned that in your small group and it so resonates with like what I'm all about.
Yeah, I know. It's so amazing. And I wish my small group was virtual because it's like the best small group I've ever attended in my life. I just love it so much. But I was gonna say something. What was I gonna say? Totally lost my brain. Oh, I lost it. Cause I don't remember. But yeah, I was gonna say something to what you just said.
You write it down.
I know, I didn't write it down. That's what
About
happens when
gifts.
you use your brain so fast. Yeah, I think I know, in the Bible, I think it says somewhere about, like, God gives you a gift, but if you don't use it, like, someone else will.
Mm.
I think it says something like that. I don't know exactly where it is, but it was like, that also scared me too, because I was like, oh my gosh, like, I need to do this because I don't want our gifts to go to waste, you know what I mean? Or not, to someone else. I mean, of course, there's tons of yoga teachers, there's tons of coaches, there's tons of moms, of course, but it's like, he's giving you a specific gift to share, and I just look at, like, when I was in such a rough place, all the podcasts I listened to, all the teachers was taught from, all the pastors that, I needed to hear all of those things. And it was kind of like the same thing, but in a different way, in a different story. And I feel like God really wakes people up through that, and that's why I feel like I'm called to do what I'm to do to wake people up, like get them shaken up and do something different. But I just love our time together. I know we need to, like, catch up more just in life. But I saved the best question for last. Oh, well, two questions. So how can we find you? I'm going to put lots of links. But if you want to go ahead and, like, say your links or, like, say where you are, say your website, you can go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to put all your links and, like, all the information that I post after this.
Okay. So I'm everywhere. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and TikTok, all three of them. I'm Sasha Star Robertson, just all one word. It's my name. So super easy there. I have a free Facebook community that you're able to join. It's primarily for moms, but I have multiple women in there who are not moms. They just really resonate with my message and want to get their hands on some of the stuff that I'm sharing and be inspired and motivated on the regular. So that's Intentional Abundance Community in Facebook. And then my website is intentionalabundance.life. And so you can find me there as well. And I'm open to, like, DMs or whatever. You can send me a personal friend request. You can follow me on my professional page on Facebook. Like, any of that works for me. Send me a DM on Instagram, like, whatever. I'm easy.
I love that. Because I know some people I, like, message and they're, they either never message back or, it's kind of like, some people think it's weird. And I'm like, I'll go out and I'll be like, oh, I met her on Instagram, or I met her. So and some people are like, that's strange, but I love it. Like, I've made amazing people through Facebook and Instagram. So thank you, Facebook and Instagram.
I agree. I met a woman on Instagram that I later found out was mutual friends with a lady who used to go to our church, but then moved to Hawaii and then now goes to her church.
Oh, wow.
But it's like just such a small world. I'm like, wait, how do you know so and so?
Yeah. It's so crazy. Oh, I love that. Okay, so last question. What is I know I already asked you this, but what is your dream travel destination?
Oh, I have multiples. Okay, so for one, I really want to go to Israel. Like, really, really want to go to Israel. I would love to just experience, like, the places where Christ walked, and all of that would be so neat. But my number two is New Zealand. It's been kind of on our to-do list, bucket list, for probably like 4 or 5 years now, but it's always like, oh, we're adopting, we need to save our money. Now we have too much for him to fly, and now we're adopting again. So, but New Zealand is a place I really, really want to go. Originally it was Australia, but there's a lot of poisonous things there and large spiders, whereas New Zealand, there's no poisonous things on the island. So New Zealand. and Israel are like my top two.
That sounds amazing. I love those. I'd want to go there too. There's definitely some poisonous things here now. Like I'm from Maryland and then we moved to South Carolina, but I haven't really seen anything. And then when I was in the desert in Arizona, I'm like, I'm going to see a snake, but I didn't. So it was fine. I'm sure that you just have to be careful. But anyway, I just appreciate your time. Do you mind if I pray for you as we close out?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Hey God, thank you so much for this time. I just love this time with Sasha and just in general to share her story. And I just pray that she said something, or I said something that God just used us to share to a lady that's struggling right now, or someone that may feel inspired to share their story. I just thank you so much for this show and for Sasha's heart. I pray that she is blessed in what she does, and many women are able to use and learn from her planner. And I pray that you just bless her in her ministry and her marriage and her family as she's a mom. And thank you so much for just using us. And I can just speak for myself. I surrender my will over to you, God. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. So I hope that inspires other women to just walk closer to you. And I just pray that you continue to light their path and help us to grow closer to you, and just to find more like-minded women, and just to build a big community of just walking closer to you each and every day. We love you so much. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Oh, thank you. I'm such a I'm trying to get better at the praying. Like I'm trying to, I'm like, I need to pray. I was actually, I can reach any women that are afraid to pray, like just pray, just say, I'm going to pray for you. And I try to pray, because I always think praying is, it's a vulnerable thing, and I didn't always pray out loud, but when I started teaching, I'm like, well, I guess I have to do that. Anyway, I'm going to put all your links below so you can follow Sasha. I'm so excited that you were here, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.